welcome back to the podcast. Today we have a great guest on, Tyler Carroll. He's an Army medic, a combat veteran from Afghanistan, firefighter, and co-founder of Dead Reckoning Collective Publishing and Dead Reckoning Collective. So, Tyler, thanks for coming on.
Thanks for having me, man. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. So we'll dive right into it, bro. So why did you join the Army, and then what led to Dead Reckoning Collective?
Oh man, so I kind of
two simple questions.
No kidding. I can answer them say because I wanted to, and we can stop right there. You know.
Yeah, exactly.
No, I come from a military family, generations back from Vietnam, Desert Storm, and then as I was growing up, I had family that was currently in, grandparents and parents. And in fact, I actually hated the military growing up because I saw what it did to the family side. I had no interest in joining my entire childhood, to include my early adulthood. I didn't understand it. The only part that I saw was the family side of it. I'm a child of divorce, and so I saw that that's what happened. My grandparents have been divorced multiple times, and I just easily associated the military with that. But when I decided to go to college and goofed off a whole bunch and realized being an adult's hard very quickly, and I needed some structure in my life. The military just started looking appealing, you know. I originally wanted to get in the military intelligence side. My entire goal when I was joining the military was to open up opportunities once I got out. I didn't care to be a badass. I didn't care to prove myself. I wanted to travel, and I wanted to set myself up once I got out. Just full transparency. It was very self-preservation. I'd messed up, and I was trying to get on the right track. Once I started talking to recruiters, I realized they're used car salesmen, and they're trying to give you anything that they can, regardless what you want. I had the scores to get anything I wanted, but the timing was all off. And so I was sitting there in the MEPS office saying, hey, I want military intelligence. This is what I want. I have the grades or the scores, whatever. Please give it to me. Can't help you, kind of thing. Something spoke to me of, hey, what about something in the medical field? It's recession proof. Once you get out, you can go down that path, you know? And so I asked about that. They pretty much said no, started scooting my chair back, saying, all right, I guess I'm done. And as I was about to leave, he sat me back down. He made some phone calls, supposedly, got all pumped up on the phone, reached across the table, gave me some fist bumps and said, I got you. This is what I got. And he showed me a 68 whiskey combat medic. To me, it looked like a glorified nurse. I was like, sweet, I'll just work in the hospital. I won't have to deal with anything. As I went to the military basic training, I realized I actually am a lot more motivated than I originally thought. I actually want to take this seriously, you know? I was in Fort Leonard Wood with a bunch of people that just were joining for the same reasons that I was. I realized that's not an honorable way to join. That's not very serious. People were taking basic training like a joke. I joined in 2011, so things were kind of calming down at that point. Osama bin Laden had just been killed while I just enlisted, and so people were like, I guess this thing might be over. And I was doing really well PT, doing really well with everything. And as I went to AIT for medic school, I was like, all right, sweet, I'll be around people who are taking this serious again. And nope, it's San Antonio. We have weekends off. A lot of people want to be medics that are prior enlisted. So we had a bunch of prior enlisted people that were able to party on the weekends, and it was a mess. I call it summer camp because I was going during the summer, and we were going to the Riverwalk partying a bunch, you know. So I took it very serious, and I was able to get airborne school, and I wanted to get on the line, front line as quick as possible. So I got the 173rd and got attached to a platoon and did that whole thing. And like you said, got to deploy to Afghanistan and had a lot of fun and got to prove myself and had a really good time. But as I deployed and as I lived in Italy for 3-4 years, I had a lot of stories.
Lucky fuckers, man. I found out about all the Army duty stations. Like I got stationed in Hawaii, so I did get but I mean, that's so rare in the Marine Corps. But then I started hearing about Army duty stations, typically, South or whatever, Fort Bragg. But then they're like, oh no, there's Germany, there's Italy, there's like all these other places. Like it's a pretty good shot, you could end up there. And I was like, you sons of bitches, like it was awesome.
You go for airborne school. And, just to kind of tell a quick little funny story. Like I said, I come from a military family. My father's SF, and my grandmother on my mom's side was a full bird colonel as I enlisted.
Oh, wow.
And she was in charge of the brigade chief of staff for the South Central region of the country. She was a former Black Hawk pilot, all this stuff. But she's at the very tail end of her career, 36 years in, full bird colonel. And as I got my orders, I originally had Fort Campbell, and I was going to be part of a support hospital. And I was like, all right, whatever, that's fine. But I want airborne school. And I got airborne school, and I got selected for it. But we were talking about budget cuts before this. Budget cuts happened, and every one of us got all of our airborne school slots taken away from us, unless it was part of our contract.
Yeah.
Regardless of PT scores, testing score, all that stuff. And so like 30 of us all of a sudden got pulled from it, like 2 weeks before the school was over. And all of a sudden I tell my grandma where I'm going Friday. In Monday morning formation, I have my company commander and platoon sergeant coming out into the quad, giving me a desk there, pulling me into the office saying, who the fuck do you know? Why am I getting a call from a full bird colonel to say, give you airborne school after we just told 30 people that they're not going to airborne school? And I got Italy and airborne school. So I was pulling strings at 19 years old, the first 3 months in the Army.
That's fucking sick. I can't fault anybody for that, man. Fate plays its cards, but also, you gotta pull those strings when you can.
Yeah, they were, and that was not my intentions. Like, my grandma was like, oh, what'd you get? I was like, oh, Fort Campbell. And she's like, that's not what you want, right? And I'm like, not at all. I'm like, I wanted airborne school wherever, Alaska, Hawaii, Italy. Like, I thought that was like a pipe dream, And then out of my airborne school, I was the only one going to Italy. And so it's because she pulled some strings, and they were all livid. And then all of a sudden they're like, at the very end of it all, they're like, you know what? I've been in the military for 18 years and I've never been able to pull strings like that and use somebody that I know. And you figured that out this quick. Good for you. Like, they were pissed at first, and then they realized it by the end of it. And so, kind of going back to the Dead Reckoning thing. I lived a hell of a life within those 4 years that I served. During my deployment, got to see a lot of action. One of my best friends died in action, and I got wounded in action, along with a couple of other buddies. I came back and got selected for Special Forces, was about to go down that path. Had a Q course date. We were talking about when ISIS blew up around 2014. Me being in Italy, we were the response force for that, deployed to Turkey. All this stuff moving, and I was seeing the world and having the time of my life. But I'd realized the war's dying down. I'm not ever going to get Italy again, pretty much. I don't think it gets better than this. I should probably go ahead and get out at 23 rather than 28 or 30 or whatever, do a full 20, when that wasn't my goal. When I started, I was like, I might as well start my life now or have a little bit more control over it. So I went ahead and pulled out of the Q course. Never started it, but never went through with my orders because I didn't want to re-enlist for it because they didn't have the Bear program at that time, which was essentially you re-enlist after the fact. They weren't offering that during my time. And so I had multiple knee surgeries at this time. So I was hesitant, and I was just like, you know what? Let's just start my life with my family and all that stuff. And I don't need to be in this as I do that, And so as I got out, I had all these feelings. I had all these thoughts with losing one of my best friends. But at the same time, proving myself to myself. I was confident in my youth, but high school and failing out of college, I lost a lot of that confidence. And the military gave that back to me. And so I had a lot of mixed emotions with how much I appreciated my service and my time in, but also how much distaste I had for it and for my country and for everything. And I started writing. I started journaling. I journaled a little bit while I was in, but it really started after my time in the military, and that was with reading as well, because trying to learn from others' experiences. And my buddy Keith, who I run Dead Reckoning with, asked if anybody had anything to share longer than what social media allowed, because he's wanted to start a blog site. And I sent him what I had, and he was like, this is it. This is the first article I want to run. And we started a blog site together, and eventually we realized we both like to write. We both like to read. We saw that the veteran community needed people telling the stories from the ground, essentially, not necessarily like journalists, but the guys who aren't getting these huge book deals, who are getting these huge movie deals, but the people who have stories and thoughts to share, and they need a platform for that. And so we decided to start Dead Reckoning, which, if you remember, is the land nav term of finding yourself on a map based off of a previously known location. And so we're very reflective of our time in our life and understanding where we are and where we want to go. And we thought storytelling was the best way to do that. And so we started on a whim, 7 years ago now, maybe around that. And it just keeps growing from there. We're having a lot of fun with it and meeting really cool people as we do it. But yeah, that's kind of the genesis of all this.
Before we keep going with the podcast, I want to drop this week's discount code for 9line Apparel. We're not just a brand, we're a lifestyle that celebrates the spirit of freedom, courage, and American values. Go check out our gear, including hoodies, glassware, flags, jackets, hats, patches, and much more. All material is ethically sourced, so every shirt you buy is free of slave labor. As a veteran-owned and operated company, we also take pride in giving back to those who've served. Your purchase helps us contribute to charitable initiatives supporting veterans and first responders. This episode's discount code is DRC20, DRC20, for 20% off 9line Apparel products. I say again, DRC20, not 10, not 15, 20%, not 25, because that's a bit excessive. So get over to the store and get yourself 20% off your next purchase. While you're at it, like, listen, and subscribe to the 9line Apparel podcast for future discount codes and more conversation with amazing guests like today. Now back to the podcast. Yeah, that's awesome. So it's been around a lot longer than I thought. Of course, then again, though, I think like, oh, it's only been a few years, but it's actually been like 8. So I remember hearing about you guys a while ago, but I was like, but in my head, I think that's only like a year or two, but it's actually probably been like 6 or 7. So you guys fired up then around, so that's where my time frames start getting messed up. But you've been around though since like 2013, 14. Is that when you kind of fired it up?
No. Okay. Okay. I did say 7 years. I say we've been, about 7 years, because it was about 2017, 2018 when we started. And it was a very, very slow start. And so it started off with a blog site. And then we realized, as like I said, that people wanted to get their voice out there. And there's so many blog sites already out there and so many online publication companies. And we're like, we don't want to kind of reinvent the wheel. Let's look into print. Let's look into something that's dying. Let's try to do something that makes very little money. let's
like that. Yeah. Let's look at something that's dying. Yeah. And I love that. That's awesome. So,
and then on top of that, let's look at poetry. Like that seems like it would be awesome, and something that would be worth our time. And so we started an anthology, and we took submissions, and we published our first anthology, in Love and War, the Poet Warrior anthology, back in 2018 timeframe, maybe 2019, and it had over 40 veterans submitted to it. Became a #1 new release on Amazon, and it blew up. And that's what kind of put us on the map. And we realized, I guess we're a publishing company. And we kind of went from there and started recruiting people who we saw as true writers that just need somebody in their corner, cheering them on, helping them out with the logistics of publishing a book, editing a book, selling a book, marketing a book. And we're like, we can be those guys and kind of create the collective group around it. I've always said, when one of us succeeds, we all succeed. We become more of a family and a lot of really good friends, as well as business partners and colleagues. We like to see ourselves almost more as a record label than a publishing company. Like, if you know about one of our authors, hopefully you know about another author, and so that's kind of been the mindset since the early years.
Yeah. Well, so what is that challenge then? Like you said, you're getting into the book publishing space, but I remember years ago, it's weird because we see it in film with the streaming space. So I know like the Kindles back, God, this would have been like 2010 era. I had a Kindle, but I loved reading books, but I was traveling a lot. So I used a Kindle. So it's kind of like that weird, like now it was starting to go digital. And now things are very digital, very streaming, all this other stuff. What is that? God, where was I hearing? It was like kind of like, it's not, the industry's not dying, but there also isn't the demand for books as was like, say, DVDs or print, per se. Is that something that you guys have seen as a challenge, or what's that like? Because I have no idea,
Well, what's interesting is early on, when we started the company, then around that 2010 timeframe, books were dying. Print was dead, supposedly, and people were going digital, Kindle, ebooks, even audiobooks. Like, that was the route that everything was moving towards. But here recently, in the past 3 to 5 years, the market has actually changed, where print is actually going back up in demand. And ebooks are kind of going down. Like, ebooks are still there because it's so easy to produce. It's not necessarily tangible, like a physical good. It's just a PDF file, essentially, that you just open up and can toggle through really easily. So for people who travel a lot, it is the way to go. But I'm somebody who still likes physical print when I read my book. Staring at a screen on my phone or here on the computer, I can't read long form writing. I can read a quick blog post or a status or something, some motivational speech on Instagram or something. But as far as reading a book, it's hard for people's eyes and people's attention. I think there's a disassociation. It's like somebody sitting down to write an email on their phone compared to writing an email on their laptop. It's two different formats, and that's the same thing for a physical book and an ebook. Now, audiobooks are skyrocketing right now, which within the poetry world is kind of hard because they're segmented so much. But as far as novels and nonfiction books go, you can audiobook that just fine, and we are getting into that space. And so the challenges are there, but with so much things moving digital within the business world, so many things are also moving on demand. Look at printing shirts. Some people still hold stock of their inventory at a warehouse or something like that, but a lot of places are moving into the on-demand space where, hey, I don't need a storefront or anything like that, so I don't need to hold inventory. I can print on demand. Well, there's a lot of publishing houses out there that print on demand as well. So you do your bulk order up front, get that into the bookstores, into people's hands really quick at a cheaper rate, and then they have on-demand orders as well.
Ah, that's cool. I didn't think, again, you can apply that almost to any industry, but we've done that. There's some guys I'm working with that we're kind of doing the t-shirt thing. We're only like 10 years behind, 15 years behind on that trend, but veterans and t-shirts. But it is fun though. And it's more of like a hobby, but it's fun designing your stuff, throw it on. But we did find some places, or I think it was Printful is one of them. And dude, it's pretty damn good on the margins. Depending on how much you're printing. But I agree with you too, that I was, now you think of it, you're like, yeah, why wouldn't a publishing or a manufacturer do that? Just, we'll print the books on demand as we go, like it's, And I think that's the issue. Oh, go ahead.
No, keep going.
Oh no, I was just saying, like, it's awesome that you can do that with books. I think books definitely need that in its category to be able to, like, just like said, oh, let's order this book and print it off. And the thing is, though, is the issue we're seeing, and it's just happened. I've talked about it for the last 3 years, and in the last few months, it's starting to come to fruition. Is DVDs. It's, as a filmmaker, you're like, used to buy DVDs a lot. They always used to be in stock. Whatever, et cetera, et cetera. Streaming services bought those up. They're not reprinting films anymore. So now these films that you do love and you're like, oh, whatever, it's on Netflix, it's on whatever. Some of them, that's where it used to be mainstream. There's no reason to print because the demand isn't there, like DVDs, manufactured DVDs. So now these movies you cannot get. And that was kind of the worry for years, is people like, well, DVDs will always be around, whatever, but streaming's kind of killed that. So there's been a little bit of an uptick for people to go back and start trying to find on Amazon or these eBay to find old copies of films, because, if you're, a film auteur, or even like you're a big, bookworm or whatever, like it's nice to have that shelving. Like I built one in my house, like of all the films I've ever purchased over the years, it's like well over 100. And so it's like, and I want more. And I've created a list on Amazon where it's like, I need to buy these. And I've bought ones I haven't even opened up in the package, but it's there because streamers, they swap out titles back and forth, and sometimes you just can't find them. And
no, that's a good point.
On to, it's wild. Like I 28 days later with Cillian Murphy, because he just won the Academy Award, right? very popular film. You probably saw it a million times at Best Buy or wherever, you know, the PX and you know, it was very in demand and it's very normal, but you cannot find 28 Days Later anymore in print on Amazon. You'd either have to buy a used DVD or a Blu-ray that's like $70 and it's pre-used, you know, prior, you know, it's a used one, or you have to go on eBay. And so it's like, oh shit, you might want to start buying physical copies again, because you shut it down, you know, internet goes, your whole fucking library goes, you know, you don't.
Yeah, that's a good point. We actually just ran into that maybe like 2 or 3 days ago. My wife's a huge movie buff. I enjoy movies, don't get me wrong, but my wife is a huge movie buff, and my oldest son loves movies. And most Friday nights we do a movie night, but I was on shift the past couple of days, and so we did a movie night on Tuesday or Wednesday. I think it was Tuesday, and I wanted to watch Matilda for some reason. I think I saw some meme on the internet talking about Matilda.
Yeah.
And so we started looking it up online, and we had to rent it or buy it on Amazon. And I was like, oh, man, I think we have it somewhere. And my wife has a ton of DVDs in storage, and she's like, no, I have that. And so she went into our little storage room and found it and came out, and we had to bust out the DVD player and we watched it. And I hadn't seen a DVD menu in probably like a year. And we had to pause it multiple times, rewind it, whatever, because kids kept running in and out. And it's just funny that you say that, because there's been a couple of times, like Grandma's Boy was another movie that I wanted to watch not too long ago, but I couldn't find it on any of the streaming services.
I love you brought that up, because we watched that as a squad constantly in our first deployment.
It's one of the best movies ever.
It's fucking hilarious. I don't even own it, but now I got to add it to my list, because it's one of those stupid movies that I'm like, God, that was fucking good. But you don't know where to find it, or you know,
you don't unless it's on one of the main. Like, you can always get things off of Amazon, but as soon as that's taken away, then yeah, you're screwed. You don't have it anymore. So it's interesting you say that, because like books, like I'm a pretty big book nerd, and I have a big old shelf as well. And I have one here in my office. I have one in the living room. I got them all scattered around now. Got multiple ones on my desk right here next to me. But there is still something about having that physical, like object that's like, okay, that's mine, you know, and it's a collector's item, you know, and so DVDs, I guess, should be treated the same, and they're absolutely not.
Yeah, and it's, you think of the books too. To me, book reading, I miss it so much, and it's my fault. But I loved reading books. It's kind of like cardio for your brain. Like, I get into it every so. Yeah. But I remember when I was deep into it, and when I was getting my bachelor's degree, and I was traveling, I was a contractor, and so I was reading nonstop. I just pick up a book. Even it's. You know, it's I shouldn't say it's shameful, but it's ridiculous. I didn't read my first full book until I was in the Marine Corps, which is typically the opposite. But like, I couldn't ever hold my attention. I was a loved film buff, loved films, but I could never keep my attention a book long enough. Fast forward to my first deployment, I'm like, okay, we have downtime. We're on patrols, or where we stop in a house and you have 3-4 hours. And this is all pre, you know, smartphones and anything else, or iPods. We had iPods, but we weren't allowed to take them on patrol, you know, which I was totally fine with. Like, we were all making sure, you know, wired tight. But so I'd read books, man, and I was burning through books like crazy. You know, I'd pick up a book and just start reading. Pick up a book, start reading. Whatever they sent, I just looked in. So I do miss doing that. I did that for years till I went to film school, really. I stopped doing it about 2014. And I do miss that, but I kept all my books and I got them in totes. Excuse me. And my wife, you know, we moved a few times, and now we're in a bigger house, and she's like, "Are you going to get rid of these books?" I was like, "No." I was like, I might not ever read them again, but they're here, and they're great books, by the way. It's like, because I got my degree in intelligence. So it's the intelligence, you know, the history of the CIA, all the president's men, like, you know, or something like that, along with like Black Ops, which is a insane read. It's like 1,000 pages, but I've read through it, you know, and same with all this U.S. intelligence. And I love those. It was great reading it. It was like awesome. And then all the fiction, man. Harry Potter, we get made fun of because I was a scout sniper, and I had it in my ruck. So we'd be in a sniper hide, and I was off for 2 or 3 hours, so, you know, and I'm just like, so I bust out Harry Potter, but they were like really good books. And, you know, I was going through Dan Brown, and So holding on to those, I think it is, it's like, also it's a collection. You've read it, like kind of be proud of how many books you've read, and especially I have a 3-year-old and I have a son that's due next week. And it is kind of one of those things where like, I think, hey, it's, I don't want to say it's a trophy, but it's like you read that book, put it on the wall. There wasn't one book I had in high school that I read all the way through, but like, my wife did. She's a big kind of a book nerd too. She's a big film buff too, but a book nerd as well. But it's like, all right, well, the kids, as they read, put it on the shelf. Like they should be reading Jurassic Park and Dan Brown, and for fun, because it's just, even if it's entertaining, it fires your brain. It definitely like keeps it exercising. And I've noticed it too. Like I'm trying to get back into it. I mean, as you know, life is so fucking busy, just to sit down at the end of the day. Then it's like, and then I feel guilty. And I'm like, well, maybe I should be writing a screenplay or making a pitch deck, not sitting reading philosophy, but I need to read the philosophy, So it's just like, there's so many things to do that you just got to pick one depending. And I do miss that. And, I think for kids or people growing, it's like, it's like that's what you've accomplished. You've watched these many films, or this is how many books have you read, and there's the shelf, and when I was a contractor, I shipped all the books to Afghanistan because I was doing my degree online there between missions. So I would have a shelf that was just all books, and people would walk in and be like, what the fuck is this, a library? And I'm like, well, I'm writing papers, and I look up and I remember the book enough where I can pull it, find the chapter and cite my sources and then put it back, if I was talking about something. And yeah, man, I agree with that. I think that's why I say I really agree with you. The whole having it in print, but holding on to it, because not only did you read it, it's something that you should be proud of. Like if you finish a 700-page book or a series, it's kind of an accomplishment. You know what I mean?
Oh, it's huge. There's some stuff online right now. And I was talking about the audiobooks. Some people make fun of audiobooks. I like to read and I like to listen. Any random task around the house, mowing the lawn, sweeping, mopping, dishes, whatever, I'll toss in my audiobook, and that makes any of those tasks is that much more bearable. But if I really like an audiobook, I'll buy the physical copy too, because you can get free audiobooks through some library apps, but I also pay for Audible. But I also want to support the author, for one, and then two, I call that shelf also my audiobook trophies as well. So I put those up there, so it's another physical representation of like, hey, I actually spent a lot of time with it, and I like that you called it cardio for your brain, because anytime I'm really actively reading, it is like a workout, and I associate a lot of stuff with physical fitness. I was a personal trainer briefly, being a medic, now being a paramedic. Like health is one of the most important things to me, and that's what I relate a lot of things to. But as you're reading or listening to things in those books, it's funny, like my mind associates certain tasks with the books as I was reading them. And so like when I think of training for special forces, I think of A Farewell to Arms, because I was reading that book as I was training for selection. When I think about remodeling my entire backyard, I think of Space Odyssey, because I was listening to that book as I was doing it and stuff. And so like it helps with your memory a lot of the times. And somebody with TBI, like I have to do anything to help my memory. But you spend so much time with those characters or with that story or with that author that it becomes this endeavor that becomes a part of who you are, your personality to a certain degree, but also a huge talking point. As a film guy, I'm sure you can relate. You love talking about things that you love, and with the books, you want to be able to talk about that with anybody that's willing to listen, because you just devoted anywhere from 4 to 30 hours of yourself to it.
Yeah, exactly. It takes an effort too, by the way. Like film, I'm locked in for 2 hours, and you can, really great movie. You're like, God damn, that's good, and it sticks with you. But a book, I mean, you keep going, and like I said, it's like it's a kind of a marathon, and you're just like, God, that. That's why I loved reading books, because it helped my filmmaking, like your ideas. It's like you're firing on all cylinders, because you can grab ideas from here and here, or it just makes your brain work better. And, that's, and like I said, I kind of understood why people did reading groups, or book clubs, because it is an undertaking when you're like, I just spent all week reading this fucking 500-page book, and then the characters and its depth and the story and the structure, and, it's all super involving, like, and so when you get together and you say, hey, check what do you think of this? Like, right. There's so many things that you can go over and yeah, it's like, you can't get that in film, no one's ever praised you for like sitting down and watching the Game of Thrones. Or like,
Yeah.
you're like, what are you, a lazy piece of shit? Did you not work this week or what?
Yeah.
Yeah. They're like, yeah, look, I watched all the Friends. It's, yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. You're like, oh, I watched Peaky Blinders. Like, that's pretty good, isn't it? Like, yeah. And you're like, but it's like, but it's not the same as reading a book. Like, I can sit there and drink beer and eat whatever. I actually, like, you lose, you can actually like, hey man, I probably should do this all the time. I need to go hit the gym, and whereas like reading, it's like, you're in it, you're in it. And it's like studying, but fun. But I get why I started understanding why you had book clubs. And I think that is awesome. And I do appreciate when I was in I was reading so many books, and I've held on to those books too. I still have them, like I said, in my totes here at home, and the whole collections of everything that I've ever read. So I agree. I think that's huge, and it's cool hearing about that, especially for people who think about writing a book. I've been thinking about writing one with a buddy of mine now. We brought it up last week, and I just had William Yeski on. Esky had his last name, Damn the Valley, like right before we were talking, and he was talking about guys writing books and kind of our generation not getting into that, but our guys on the ground that fought in the infantry, like talking about how they should really get their stories out there. Podcasting helps, that's probably the best, sometimes the best and easiest format to get somebody on and interview them and talk with them, but really getting it down on paper for current generation and the future generations, and whatnot. And so with Dead Reckoning, then how have you guys grown? Like, what's your overall like vision for the future, I guess you would say, or like, how's it doing now? And then where do you guys, kind of want to plan on taking it?
Yeah. So right now we're having one of our best years that we've had in a while, this year with it's just a few of us that are actively in like the operational side of things to get these books to a finished product. We have, over 15 authors now that we've published. I think about 20 plus books that we've done over the past couple of years. And like, there was the first couple of years, it was like maybe 1 or 2 books a year. It was super small indie publishing company, just us helping get stories out there. Right now, this year, we're on track to do a book a month, which has always been a huge goal of ours. And we're making it happen. But like we're talking about, life is busy. I have 4 kids, and my business partner has multiple kids. He just moved from Canada all the way to California not too long ago. He just finished his master's in social work. I finished my master's in creative writing last year. I'm a full-time firefighter. We wear a lot of hats, just like a lot of us tend to do for some reason,
Exactly, yeah.
But one of our biggest goals have always just been consistent. We've been proud of every single book that we put out. That has our little logo on it, and we truly believe in every single one of our authors that if they wanted to make this their full-time gig, or if the book got into the right hands, that it's unmatched with any other book that's coming out right now. The printing, the covers, the formatting, and the writing specifically, all of it is top notch. And so we're proud of every single project that we start and finish. But the near goal is to be consistent with accomplishing this book a month. The long-term goals have always also been within the educational side of things, because we don't only just publish books, we teach writing. That's why I went and got my master's. That's why we have partnered up with so many other editors and people who have written with other big publishing companies. And we bring them in to teach a specific craft, those master classes type of things. And so we will host these classrooms where you can purchase through the site, and we'll have anywhere from 5 to 40 people hop on a class and learn about how to make a living as a writer, intro to a memoir, erasure poetry, character development, setting development, like these specific kind of niche classes. We've learned that the more broad and like kind of beginning writers, like journaling 101 is like one of our biggest classes. And it's because we've realized that we're kind of the gateway to writing to a certain degree. We're a lot more approachable than the publishing industry. It's terrifying to go down this route. Academia is not our world at all. And so we make it a lot more approachable and a lot more appealing to the person who's just like, hey, I think I want to be able to tell my story better. How do I do that? Get into one of our classes. It's relatively affordable. Talk to us. We're open, and we'll lead you down the right path. We'll give you the right reading recommendations. We'll link you up with one of our writers, one of our editors. And you can get, if you just become a friend with them, you can just talk writing, or you can actually do one-on-one classes, you know. And so the educational side of things has always been a huge goal of ours. But the big vision that we've always had is to be able to get a property and to be able to do writing retreats. We have done a couple of writing retreats where we do writing workshops. Marty was a part of one not too long ago, who you're about to have on with Mac. He was a part of one not too long ago, and actually a story that he published with, or that he submitted for that workshop is part of the book that he just published. Same thing with Marty. He had put in a chapter of Send Me into this writing workshop a little bit, at least just for us to just give him a little bit of feedback, you know. And so it's creatives surrounding themselves with other creatives to get honest feedback, to talk about the craft of whatever genre you're writing about, and then also just to get inspired, to hear about other people's projects, to hear about other people's lives, to hear about how they're balancing it, you know, is to be able to get into that community that much more. And so that's always been our huge, big goal, is to get writers and creatives connected as much as possible and as creative of a space as possible, and if possible, long term. A lot of master's programs, if you think about like hospitals, they hold residencies. They hire a doctor and they put them under a fellowship. They are attached to that hospital, and they have a living quarters that they go sleep in, and they come and work at the hospital. Well, that's also the same thing for artists. I have a friend that's a professional woodworker, essentially a sculptor, and he bounces around from residency to residency, and he's been all over the United States getting room and board paid for, maybe $1,000 a month to live off of, and he just gets to create wood sculptures. We would love to be one of those facilities that writers can come to, specifically veterans that are writers, and we give them a space anywhere from 1 week to 1 month to however long we can eventually get this to, where they can have the space and time to sit down and work on what they want to work on. And all they have to do is focus on that, and maybe contribute to the house, the property, the business, if we have something there at that physical location. But that's always been our long-term goal. It's just now about making that happen.
Yeah. And so, you know, I think we talked about this a little bit, but what are the challenges then of a publishing company in 2024, you know, and marketing and distribution and all that kind of stuff? Like, how do you guys deal with those challenges and in growing a business? Like writing is, you know, it's a, like I said, it's a hard business to be in with publishing and whatnot.
Yeah.
So how are you guys kind of tackling that?
So fortunately, the writing part is almost, for us, one of the easiest parts, because we have a Rolodex of people that have near finished products. And so we've been talking to people for years that have been brewing this idea that they want to get on paper. And we say, okay, once you get to about 80-90%, we're here to help you get the rest of the way. But a lot of it's on you to get there. We can help you here and there on the way, but get it to that near finished, and we'll help you bring it all the way through. You know, that's the fun part. Where the challenging part is the distribution. You know, we have our own distribution center that we hold all of our products, not just our books. And so the logistics of that, because it's at a different site than where we're located, that's just logistical things that you just overcome. You know, that's with any business. That's not too much. Where we're seeing a lot of our issues personally is we started on social media. That's where our biggest platform is at, Instagram to be specific. And now Instagram has become essentially TikTok's like younger brother. And now it's all about the reels and all about the short span attention kind of clickbaity stuff. You know, that's what the internet's become. The whole idea with us starting a blog site however many years ago when we started this was, hey, you're sitting down to digest something that's actually been thoughtful, and somebody's putting their heart and soul into it, and you're sharing that experience with them. And so we are learning to try to adjust to bring in new people. We have a strong and loyal fan base since we started. Like day ones, we developed very, very deep, meaningful relationships with a lot of people. very, very early on, and they've stuck with us the entire time, and they're amazing. Right now, because we're having to adjust what we originally started, and that's just about getting out there. It's about bringing in new people. We have cornered our little niche little market, and people know about us. Anytime people think of veteran writers, they usually think of Dead Reckoning as well, even if they are not published through us. Marty wasn't published through us, and people automatically associate Marty with us. Like there's people that are just associated with us because they're writers that happen to be veterans. And so we've done a very good job with that, but it's about getting out of that demographic that we're still trying to figure out. We're talking about film. You create a piece of content or a product. That's one step of the process. That's the artistic fun side. Well, now you got to put on a business hat and learn about marketing and sales and networking and getting in there. And we went through COVID like everybody else, where everything was still virtual for a long time. And we're 2 years out of it now, roughly, but we're still like not getting in person as much as we would like, because just the logistical things that have things being backed up, and us still being in that routine of, hey, things could just be done virtually, or now things are starting to shift back to being in person, And so there's a lot of things to consider. And with a small team, you have to wear a lot of hats, and to be able to shift that focus and attention while not being spread too thin, it's difficult for sure, because I have my own personal projects that I like working on too. I'm a creative. I like working on film a little bit. I have my own little writings that I'm always working on. But at the same time, I'm helping other people finish their products, and that's two totally different mindsets.
Yeah, exactly. Because, like I said, that's I like how you said that too, and it's always the battles with creatives, because creating it is the best part, and then after that, that's where guys, if you want to make it in the industry, or you want to keep moving forward without being super frustrated, it sucks. Because I deal with that was like sales. Even if you're like, oh, great commercial director, or you're a great whatever YouTuber, like, well, now you got to get people to pay you. So that's the first challenge, and then you got to get paid properly, and then you got to go, okay, let's create it, cool. Then they want to know, how does this essentially now everybody is wearing multiple hats, like you said, and now you're marketing. Now, are you the marketing? Are you distribution? Are you social media marketer? Are you a traditional marketer? Are we showing this on TV? No, we're not. We're going to buy Google ads. Okay, what's the SEO? Now you're getting into like 5 different significant job fields, and sometimes these people want you to answer those questions, but it's like that's not it. But you're trying to have to wear those hats, which is frustrating. And all you want to do is just create the product.
Yeah. And when you become a business owner, you have a surface level understanding of all of those, but it requires a deep understanding of all of those, and so some things we do extremely well, in some areas we fall short, and so it's that kind of put ego aside and be humble enough to admit, okay, 1, I need help, or 2, I need to spend more time in this, which unfortunately takes away from this, and so it's all a balancing act that everybody's figuring out. It's possible, but it's something to manage and something to consider, and it's something to take serious. But you just got to ask yourself the right questions and hope to find the right answers,
Exactly. Yeah. So when you guys are going through this process, then like, and you're selling books, is there a higher demand for like print? Like you guys moving, significant, I should say significant amount, but you know what I mean? Like a lot of books where it's like, oh shit, man, this is nuts. We're moving 100, 500,000 copies, stuff like that. Like
we started in poetry, and poetry is extremely niche. What's considered a great poetry book is literally like 200 copies. Like it's lifetime. Like that's considered, hey, you did really good in poetry, and that's not much money. Yeah. There's not much money in there. And we've never sold less than that with any of our authors. Again, we have a very, very loyal fan base and just community. That's why we call it the collective, But nonfiction is where the marketing, that's the readership right now. You're talking about sales, or you're talking about what does well right now. It's nonfiction. Think of any big writer right now. The big fiction writers are usually women right now, like a Colleen Hoover, or they're old school fiction writer like a Stephen King, or like a Stephen King.
Colleen Hoover. I see that name everywhere in my house right now. My wife's got like 4 of her books on the nightstand.
And my wife eats them up, and so fiction, if you now thinking about the business strategy, let me put that hat on. Fiction right now appeals to women or young kids, and so it's young adult and kind of that romance kind of thriller mystery type of feel, and that's where fiction's at. War fiction is only so popular. Historical fiction is only so popular. Even fantasy is extremely niche, but you got to go into that world itself. Same thing with horror. We're not part of that world. We're part of the veteran community, and so that's nonfiction stuff. Mac's book right now that we just put out is doing extremely well because it is a war memoir. But you move over to poetry, you're talking to a guy that you're in the intelligence community, or that's what you're getting your bachelor's in, and that's what you're reading. You talk about poetry to you. How appealing does that sound? How do we make that sound appealing to you? Okay, well, if you think of meditations and philosophy, okay, that's a step closer to poetry, and so we can still kind of pull people's interest by making people think and showing some artwork with it, but you're still trying to break a barrier that hasn't really been broken too much, and so it is difficult but it's fun and it is challenging, and we'd like to think that we are a huge part of why guys within our demographic are choosing to read, choosing to be emotional and understand their emotions a little bit better, not be erratic with them or anything, to think intelligence is cool again, to think reading is cool again. I think that we are a huge driving force within our community that have made all of those appealing again and to make those cool again. You think about throughout history, the greatest leaders were readers type of thing. That's becoming common again, but it's also dominantly nonfiction books, the leadership books out there, the self-help books out there right now. And to me, that's only the surface level of what storytelling is, what nonfiction even holds, and then you can kind of start nerding out of what nonfiction is, and then you start pushing people away. If you start talking about these niche noir films back in the 40s that you think are amazingly shot because it's the first of its kind, that looks awesome to you, but to somebody who's just like, man, I'm trying to be entertained, or I'm trying to learn something, you're going to turn them off, So it's you just got to kind of find your demographic that you're trying to appeal to with each book, and we do a decent job of that.
That's awesome. So is there a reason why the nonfiction is kind of taking off a little more? Because I know, like I said, in the leadership books too, I mean, it might be social media, but you can kind of like, I even got like the stoicism, that's like coming back, or at least it's like, it's I've seen that trend. And now granted, I think social media plays a role on, if you weren't exposed to some of that when you're young, it's like, and people get exposed to it because they've just never been told that. You're like, oh my God, it's a cool thing to see that when people kind of discover like goal setting. I always consider myself pretty fortunate. When I was younger, a lot of stuff that's being thrown out into the world with like the Jockos and the Jordan Petersons and the, stoicism, like I was fortunate to see that as a kid through wrestling, like goal setting, integrity, which was doing the right thing when no one else is looking, training. They say, it's like, yeah, are you training? There's a guy in a cave right now training to kill you. But we had it was like, are you outworking your opponent? Because he's like I'm running when they're sleeping. Like we were told that before the t-shirts, before social media, so that was kind of like fortunate to be exposed to that early on, in my life where I, I'm like, okay, like the clean your bed stuff. Like, it's like, or clean your room. It's like, well, yeah, of course. But now it's become this worldwide phenomenon with what, at least on the men's side of the house. Is there kind of a reason for that with the nonfiction, like people kind of going back and wanting to be more philosophical or wanting that more in their life because of social media, or like, you know what I mean? Like finding meaning again through nonfiction, I guess you would say.
Yeah, you're definitely, I think, on the right track with it. Everybody wants to be the best version of themselves right now. That is, mental health is all the craze, and I dealt with my own time of depression and stuff, and was fortunate enough to learn very early on of how to get through it. I was an athlete as well as a kid, so you learned about a lot of those skills early on in life, and then when you go through hardship really early on in your life, you have to learn to adapt and overcome. When you're in the military, you hear all about all the stuff that's super cool and popular nowadays that you're like, yeah, I knew about that 10 plus years ago. But I think social media is playing a huge part in that. Being the best, being what human optimization is, I think, being thrown around a lot, everybody can be as efficient as they possibly can at all times. And that is attractive because that means I'm going to make the most money. I'm going to be the most present. I'm going to be the best father. I'm going to be the best husband. I'm going to be the best business owner. And so we have this like hyper focus on what success is nowadays. I don't necessarily agree with what success is being portrayed as right now. And I have my theories as why do people want that. But I think it's trying to fill a void personally. I think about with anybody that you talk to that almost joined the military. When you talk about how you joined the Army or whatever, they're like, oh man, I almost did that. And they want to relate to you almost immediately and put yourselves in that shoes. Well, everybody has almost been something, and everybody's almost this leader. Everybody's almost this entrepreneur. Everybody's almost this thing. And if they just got that edge of a little bit more focus, a little bit more time, maybe they can squeak it out and make it happen. And so all those books, they're there to help you, and there's nothing necessarily wrong with them. But I think the hyper focus on them is kind of a trope. And I think that it's getting way too much attention than what it deserves or needs. But I do think it's rooted in the idea of I want to be the best version of myself possible. And it's because I think we're a very empty society right now. And so I think they're just trying to fill it with kind of the flashy things,
Yeah, and I think I've noticed that too, which was, it's like everybody wants, like I said, that it's that weird, like, oh, always be self-aware of this and that. But then it's like you're getting it from influencers of like, and it's that weird world because, again, like prior to that, you did things because you wanted to do them for yourself. You know what I mean? Like you ran a marathon because you wanted to run a marathon. You didn't do it so you could post it on social media. You know what I mean? Or you decided to go backpacking and find yourself because you wanted to, not because you wanted to start, an Instagram channel about traveling or look at me or wherever, you did it to do it for yourself, like you said, like the self-help stuff. But I feel like you're right. It's like, there's like, it's this weird double-edged sword of like emptiness, but yet at the same time, you can find your way to something better, like not everyone's going to be an entrepreneur or like or go nuts. So there's kind of like but you look on social media and you think everyone's doing, well, they're not, not everyone's going down this road, so I think it's just that weird thing of people trying to find meaning, but you go online and you think everyone has their meaning, but they don't, but it's that weird thing where people think they do. And they're like, well, all these thousands of people I follow have meaning. It's like, well, no, they don't. They're just like you, and so, but then people find meaning in some of those books. Like you can be a good dad and that might be which you should be, but you can take pride in being a dad. Maybe that's your meaning. You know what I mean? Like, it's like,
no, and I think that was
which is a good trend. It's good. Yeah.
And that was where a lot of Dead Reckoning started at too.
Yeah.
And that's what I mean. Like, find it. We saw what the military community was looked like, what people were perceiving it as. And that was placing these guys on a pedestal, thinking that they're rock stars and they have their whole life together because they're special operators. Or on the total other side of it is approach with caution, PTSD ridden, possibly about to be homeless, beat their kids and their wife type of thing. And there's like these two huge stigmas. And we're like, hey, like that those are stigmas, obviously. Most of us are here in the middle. Most of us that are here in the middle could have gone one way or the other. And both of those have consequences, and we wanted to kind of shine a light on the veteran community in a positive way of redefining what a good transition story is. And that is becoming a good father, going to school, getting healthy, or whatever the case may be, like sometimes good is good enough, and that's fine.
Exactly. Yeah.
But the way that I like to think about it is because I dealt with it. After I got hurt, my buddy died. I went through the total opposite of being depressed necessarily. I just became hyper focused on being the best version of myself again, so that would never happen again. and I had witnessed something so pure and so good, not something so evil. I had witnessed something on the opposite side of that, and I was trying to chase that. I was trying to chase God, essentially, of like, I can be this great again, because we were all so good in this one moment, and I was chasing for that again, and I wanted to taste that again because it feels good to feel good, you know? And, but when you're doing that, you're pushing everything else aside. You're pushing away anybody else's feelings. You're pushing away any other type of commitments you possibly have, because you're putting yourself first more than everybody. And kind of a hot sports opinion, the special operations community is the most selfish community in the world, in my opinion. Not necessarily, but like they become so singular focused that everything else goes to the wayside, you know? And they're badasses, and they're doing something that's necessary. And there's a lot of sacrifice that goes into that, because they are putting everything on hold. But I think a lot of them enjoyed that because it feeds this ego. And I was almost about to go down that path, so I can speak a little to it. And I have friends and family that are all in it, you know? And so there's consequences. And so with this focus on nonfiction, or this focus on self-help, this focus on leadership, I would kind of proceed with caution, you know? Is that really the lifestyle that you want? Because once you start it, you can't really stop. You've defined what a minimum standard of your life is now. You never want to drop below it. And it requires so much of you to maintain. Is that really what you want to do? Because there's a thing called burnout, and and there's a crashing point, you know? And it's
which again, no one talks about, which is you need to talk about. And, you know, I went down that road too. I mean, I technically have deployed 9 times, you know, and that last time which was later when I met my wife, I did it once with her, just to Kuwait, and it wasn't that big a deal, but it was obviously a big deal for her. And it's you know, you can't, you know, I remember and I was very, like you, hyper focused on that as well. Like, I'm going to keep redeploying. I'm going to go make money as a contractor. And I'm going to, you know, take it or leave it with whoever I was dating at the time, you know? And so it takes its toll, and you can't keep going on with that life depending, because, you know, after, like I said, you knew it. How many divorces were there? How many, you know, single parents were there? How many times guys that I knew that would never see their kid, or they get wrapped up? Contracting was a little worse because you could walk away, but then guys were divorced making $15,000 a month, and their alimony, dude, the child support payment, you ain't going to find that anywhere else, because you're, you know, what job were you going to get that pays $15,000 a month? You know, we're 26 years old with no degree. Like, who the fuck is going to pay you that? You know, and unless you're going to become an entrepreneur, that's fun. You know, making no money for the first year and a half. You know, so I agree. You know, you got to pick and choose your battles with that, and I think when people see that, they always see the end result of something. You know what I mean? Like and I think it's great. I think you can draw from, you know, like you said, you can draw from the inspiration of that. But like, dude, deep dive into some of these people, and you're like, dude, it's a fucking disaster of a disaster area that you'd be like, fuck that. And not in like a glorifying way of like, oh my God, they've sacrificed so much. It's like, no. Like they're a fucking disaster. Like, you know, they got some really good things to say, but that comes from a lot of pain.
There's a price for greatness. Especially,
yeah, exactly. And or sometimes there's a price for pursuing it too, by the way. You know, like, you know, what is the definition? Yeah, here we go down the road. What's the definition of greatness? You know what I mean? Do you know, what is that? Especially in our community with, like, say, veteran influencers or whatever, you know, what is that? It's not as sexy as it is. And on top of that, there's the opportunities, like, how many guys, you know, done way more stuff and they're just regular dudes. You know what I mean? They're not on the internet. They're not doing that. Or you chase some of these guys down. You know, I've been in that community a little bit. You've met a few, I'm sure. And you're like, fuck that. Like, no way. You know, that's one, you're not as cool as you say you are. And then on top of that, we know your history. Like, your reputation is, you know, maybe the civilians is great, but in the military community, it's not, you know? So it's, I agree. You know, some of it's, you know, pretty unhealthy, but you got to know when to push and pull. And like I said, that it's that double-edged sword. I think I agree with you. You know, it's like everyone's trying to find something. There's not a lot of meaning out there. So the nonfiction self-help is, and look, and not even in the veteran community. I mean, I've seen it with the mental health stuff. Like, I think it's, you know, I talk with my wife about this, and it's just like sometimes you just need to shut the fuck up and do your job, or just kind of sometimes you just need to suck it up, man.
Yeah.
And in my opinion, there's a little too much self-help on the civilian side. You need to do something hard. People don't do anything hard or remotely difficult, or they're like, well, it's difficult, so I go see my therapist. They're like, God damn, like, okay, like, people are like, well, I'm glad people are seeing therapists. Like, too many people are seeing therapists. Y'all motherfuckers need to go for a walk. I'm not even saying go to the gym. Like, I don't know, man. Like, just get a little bit of thick skin. Life's not going to go your way. So you don't need to see a therapist if you don't get something that you want. That's just life, and that's
there's a feedback
big thing,
loop.
I think,
Yeah, there's a feedback loop. You experience something traumatic, you move on with your life. If for some reason you're intentionally putting yourself back into that negative experience, and so now you have to endure it again, mentally and emotionally, and your body has a physical reaction to it, and now you got to keep moving on to it. And it's like, no, sometimes things are just better left in the past. Like it is a compartmentalization thing. It is a defense mechanism. It is a survival tactic. Sure. Sometimes that's just what's necessary. You can address it and understand it and recognize it, but at some point you do have to move on and understand the triggers and understand a lot of things that might negatively impact your life in the current moment. And therapy certainly is an aid to that, but to constantly relive it or constantly put yourself in it, man, I personally don't think that that's healthy. And I think that I was a huge mental health advocate for a long time, a decade ago or something like that. And then when I saw that the pendulum swung so far over to this advocacy and awareness, I was like, okay, hey, I think it's almost dangerous now because we're putting our traumas and our depression in everybody's face, including our own, at all time. And how is that healthy? When you accept unhealthy behaviors, it doesn't mean, and the awareness to them, it doesn't mean that you're healthy because you've recognized them. You need to stop the unhealthy behaviors. When you know that snacking Cheetos is bad for you, you don't can constantly put that in your pantry. It's a negative. It's a bad thing. Bad diets. So
and I agree with you.
I definitely I see where you're coming from.
Yeah. Well, because I remember that too, 10, 12 years ago. And I always considered myself fortunate with my transition. I mean, it was tough in some aspects, but like I remember like setting the goal and moving forward, setting the goal, move forward, like just keep moving forward. Like, it's like, I've done, and I can think back and, it's like, do I want to bring those up again? No, because I bring it up all the time in my head. Like, I don't need to keep going to it and just reliving it verbally out loud. Take it, grow from it, move forward, and like I said, I agree. Cause there was a point too where guys like you either like, oh, you bottled that shit up and drink it. It's like, well, yeah, but there's a point to where like they need to talk with the boys. That was the therapy, was like meeting up, getting hammered, talking about it. And you did that like once or twice a year. And that always really helped, and kind of like, hey, what are you doing? Well, I work for IDS, Blackwater. Like, oh, dude, can you give me a contact? Yeah. And just keep moving forward. You talk about the experiences, but then it helps you move forward into something else, But I agree. Now it's like self-help everywhere, or, oh, hey, I'm seeing what therapy do you have? Or what do you do this? Or what do you do that? Or, it's like, just sometimes you just bottle shit up. It's okay. Bottle it up, bury it down, and move on.
Yeah.
Like, I would say that as a joke, but sometimes now you're kind of like, yeah, bottle that shit up. Like, no one needs to fucking hear that. Like, bottle it up and move on. Like, it's okay. Like, it's okay to do that for stuff, Yeah.
Well, it's how I think some of us are like designed to cope with it. Kind of going back just a second, I've always asked myself, am I running away from something or am I running towards something? And that's kind of how you can figure out, like, hey, is this good or bad? But as far as coping mechanisms, going kind of to the fire side of my life, we had a really bad child CPR choking incident. Got the kid back. Freaking great call by the end of it. Pass it off. The kid lives. He's 1 year old. I have a kid I have a kid that's about the same age. So does one of the guys that runs this call. And at the end of the call, our captain's pretty much like, hey, let's sit around. Let's talk about it and all that good stuff. Okay, fine. Like, make sure everybody kind of clear the air, But in the middle of the call, one of the guys literally stops and like pets this kid's head to a certain degree and says, you look just like his son's name. And I was like, oh no, he's done. So like back in the ambulance, let's give him the simplest task to handle right now while other guys can work, you know? And we had a job to do. He mentally wasn't in it. I've seen him do extraordinary things outside of this moment. He just had one of those moments where he locked up, you know, but he still was able to do something else. As we finished the call, they asked us, hey, do any of y'all want to go home? One guy went home, and it wasn't that guy. The other ones ended up FaceTiming their wife and kids immediately to like let them know that they're good, let them know that they love them. They may not have told them what the call was, but they needed to just see their family. And I immediately texted my wife and I said, do not call me today. I don't want to see the kids because I'm at work. And my mindset is if I see you guys, it's what's going to make this real. And I'm able to disassociate with this right now. And when I come home tomorrow, I'm going to love the shit out of them and I move on. And that call didn't affect me. You know, I was able to move on with it and it is what it is. That was how I was able to cope with it, is two separate realities. Work, family, they're separate right now. Let me make a mental note of that. This is a job. I had to do it. I saw a shitty thing and I was able to perform. And now I don't want the emotional baggage that this will have if I see my wife and my kids, you know? And so I immediately said, do not call me today. And we talk every day usually when I'm on shift. But that was how I needed to handle it, because I knew if I saw my kids, I would see the connection. I would see me or my wife running out of the house carrying one of our kids, you know? And so it's like, I didn't want all that crap, you know? And I was able to understand this was just work, you know? But
yeah,
other guys had to go home. Other guys needed to see their family. Other guys didn't want to do anything other than, hey, let's just go work out now. That's what I did. I need to go work out now.
Yeah.
Let's go do some training. Like I need to get my body moving. I need to move forward type of thing, because if not, and I sit in this, it's going to be bad for me. So everybody just handles things differently, and people like to paint this broad stroke approach to a lot of things, and that's just not the reality of it.
No, I agree. I agree with that. And I remember deploying a lot, you know, because even deploying as a contractor, we were in it, you know, like we're still getting shot at. We still got, you know, suicide bombers trying to breach our gates, you know, and it is one of those things where you have to to me, that's how I just shut it all off, you know, and when you leave, you shut it off. And I'm glad I didn't have a family or a wife. Girlfriend, the first deployment, that didn't work out so well. And then everything after that was either take it or leave it, but I'm not here to comfort you or try to make a relationship work while I'm deployed. So if you don't want to be here, or if you even cause a fight, I don't give a fuck. I'm out. Like, I'm done. And so my focus was on the fight. And I agree with you on that too. It's like, you know, there are guys that I don't blame them. You know, it's like as soon as you start thinking about home or your kids or not making it back, you're a liability, and there's nothing wrong with you, but you need to get out of the squad. You need to get out of the team. Like, I need people that aren't afraid of death right now. You know, like, I can't have you hesitating, running into the hail of gunfire. I need you to, your head on straight. And if you can't focus on that, there's nothing wrong. It's time for you to retire, you know, or time to, you got to clear your head and you're not going on this patrol, because you need to be able to, you know, knock on death's door while we're out there all the time. And so, and I'm sure like you've encountered that too. Like you said, you were in it, you guys did a tour to Afghanistan. You knew exactly what that meant. And so, yeah, I agree. You know, you just gotta, I don't say suck it up and move forward, but you kind of do, you know, it's that associate, you know, we've ran into those situations too, where I can think back on that, and that would make anyone else be like, what the fuck is going on? But you can't be like, that happened, they're gone, or, you know, but we need to focus on the next task at hand and to keep going. Because if we don't, and we dwell on this, we're all going to die too. So we got to keep moving. But yeah, I agree with you. I think, you know, not to saying like, oh, this generation's soft, because I think it's kind of sometimes it's just in everyone's face, you know. It's okay to do certain things, you know, like, but the way we're wired, I agree with you. Like, don't put into that feedback loop, you know, and there is discipline, and there's, you just have to be tough, you know, like, you know, and I talk with my wife a little bit because she gets on me too about stuff, but at the same time, I recognize that she appreciates that I do that. You know, it's like that one thing. It's like, you know, I say one thing, but, you know, do a different one. You know, it's like it's like that. You know, it's like, oh, you need to see a therapist, but she also likes it when I'm just like, just I don't care. Suck it up. Let's go. So she like, she likes ball, it's like, I haven't seen a therapist yet. She's always trying to get me to go. But at the same time, I am that like, okay, whatever, fuck it, whatever, I'll do that. Be like, fuck it, whatever. Let's just go. Let's do, that she like appreciates that because we don't have to, we can move forward with things. And I'm very communicative with her, with stuff. So it's, and, but I agree. You got to take care of yourself, but you can't just keep taking care of yourself. Like, it's a self-help, I'm going to go do this or I'm going to do that. Or I'm going to keep, indulging because it's self-help. Like it's almost an indulgence now. It's not, not self-help anymore.
No, that's a good way to put it. And like, don't get me wrong. Like I'm not this emotionalist prick. Like I wrote a book of poetry myself. Like I understand emotions and I understand the dichotomy of it all, of being able to speak some truth out there and be vulnerable. But at the same time, I also know when to close it. And I think that is a skill that not a lot of people have. I think some people always leave it open or some people always leave it closed. And neither of those are healthy. It's having an appropriate reaction with an appropriate, to the right situation, and yeah.
Yeah, no, I agree. Yeah. You can't go to like, to your, somebody that's lost like a grandparent, or something else. Be like, suck it the fuck up. Like to a 9-year-old.
I've made that mistake. Not necessarily. I've made the mistake with my wife a couple of times saying the wrong thing during some really serious moments. And I was like, oh shit, this is the asshole in you. The emotional side, the emotionalist side. And then I got overly emotional and I'm like, oh gosh. And so, yeah, so I don't recommend that.
Yeah, no, exactly. Yeah, you gotta. It's a skill. It's a balancing skill. I got a 3-year-old, and you got 4 kids, so I'm sure you know how it is. Where you got to be tough, but you got to be caring, and endearing, and it's like you got to know when to push. Yeah. It's a whole. Yeah. I got number 2 coming next week, so I still got.
Congratulations, man.
Thank you. Yeah, awesome. I don't. Yeah. I'm excited, but yeah, we still got a long journey.
It is the best part of life. It is the best part of life, and that is being a parent. Absolutely
it's amazing. I do love it. And I think that's probably, not to dive too much into culture, but that definitely is, I hear a lot about that too. Like families having kids, and I'm like, honestly, it's been the best, and no one ever had to think about it 10, 20, 30 years ago. Cause that's just what you did. That was very fulfilling, just having a good family. Now it's like, now that's on the chopping block. So people are having to defend, being like, well, actually, honestly, having kids is one of the most fulfilling things, if not the most fulfilling. Done a lot of crazy, cool shit in my life. And it's been the best adventure so far.
It's the coolest.
It is. It's awesome.
It is.
I tell guys that, and exactly. Yeah. And well, even when you grow up too, man, I'm sure you're there. And I was like, I don't go out anymore. I don't care to go out. I love going to bed at 8 p.m., or 9, but getting up with my daughter and when we go and hang out and that's it. Obviously I do my filming and do other fun stuff. And it's like, you do those in chunks. You don't do that every night. You're not going out partying anymore. It's just like, yeah, man, it's just, let's stay home and watch Bluey. I'm on Bluey and Bluey's phenomenal.
It's a great show.
Advocate. It's a great show. We're like probably the second round of going through all the episodes and I still, catch stuff. I'm like, God, this is great. Speaking of writing, that's great writing. It's
great writing.
Amazing writing.
It is great writing.
It's great. It's shocking. It's shocking. Yes. Right. It's phenomenal. And there's definitely some vets involved somewhere in the Australian military. Cause there's like a few they kind of like drop stuff in. They had the one episode with a kid, his dad's in the military. I think it's Rusty. And he's like calling in medevac, or he's like, oh, we got to call in dust off. We got to call it. He's like calling it in. And I was like, dust off. I was like, who the fuck would know that? And I'm like watching, I'm like, wait a minute, what? And then he's actually like land nabbing, and I'm like, whoa, like what's going on? So, but yeah, anyways. Well, dude, this was an amazing call, man. This was great. I appreciate you coming on. Where
Absolutely.
Can people find you and find Dead Reckoning and go buy your guys' books and everything, all that stuff?
Yeah, deadreckoningco.com is our website. Dead Reckoning Collective is our Instagram. Those are the 2 biggest platforms we have. And if you want to find me for whatever reason, it is Tyler James Carroll on Instagram, and that's pretty much the only place I'm very active. I need to be more active, and I want to be more active. Just I am not right now. I go through those spurts, but yeah, if you guys, if anybody's ever interested in just storytelling or writing, please reach out. We would love to help you. It is our passion, and we love it.
Awesome, bro. Well, thanks for coming on.
Absolutely, man. Thanks for having me.